Alright, yep, looks like we're good. All the buttons are pushed. Hey, what's going on? Good morning. Alright, so let's see, let's get into this. Oh, I didn't do that. Oops. Okay. Well, good morning, guys. What's going on? Today we're going to be talking about the updated response. So basically, if you remember before, the GFI previously had asked for dismissal. Then WFG had submitted an additional updated allegations. They added Cofield and Carter and Cheranowski. And so basically we were waiting for GFI to respond to that. And it was funny because I was refreshing it all day yesterday. I checked it like 5 or 6 times, nothing came through. Finally at like almost 9:30 at night, I decided to check it one more time, and it finally came through. So that's why I didn't do a lot of marketing for this, and I did really put it out. So I appreciate you guys for being here, and I wanted to deliver something. And so I'm reading it 9:30 last night and kind of going through it, and it was a little bit underwhelming, to be honest with you. I keep waiting for this ball to kind of drop of GFI to go, here's all of the things that we found that WFG is doing wrong, and so we want to right that wrong by making a better company. And I keep kind of waiting for that to happen, and I haven't seen that happen yet. So yeah, well, we'll go through it and we'll kind of compare it. That's topic number 1. Since that was kind of a little bit of a nothing sandwich, I felt like there wasn't a whole lot there. We're also going to go through a little bit of a timeline, because I don't know about you, but I get confused a little bit with what's happening with what and when, and we're trying to figure out how these things kind of unfolded and what happened there. So we're going to go through a little bit of a timeline. I also want to go through and do a summary on the allegations so you can kind of see what the two sides are saying in a very brief overview of what that looks like. And then I want to do one more thing that I have personal knowledge of as far as the ownership goes in WFG, of stories that I've heard and some things that came out through some of this stuff, that the stories that I've heard that have happened. And because they keep talking about this ownership and what happens if you pass away and it doesn't move to your spouse and all of those things. And there are stories that I've heard of that that has happened. So I kind of want to go through that a little bit as well. So that's kind of on the agenda for today, and I think it'll be really helpful in kind of summarizing where a lot of things are at. So if you're still confused and you're not exactly sure what's going on, I think it'll be super helpful for that, and then moving forward. But as I said, this one came through last night super late, and it was funny because I was reading it, and it's almost nearly identical to the first one. So we won't spend a lot of time on it, fortunately or unfortunately. And I just kind of wanted to show you this real quick. So on the left, this is the first request for them to dismiss. And here on the right is the second one. So as you can tell, there's not a whole lot of difference in the two. Really, the only thing that we're going to look at today is this right here. The other defendants was added, and it wasn't even a page. It was a couple paragraphs. And then if you can see down here, the only thing that's changed is that they've kind of reworded all of this. But this will be important for us to understand as we get into more of the, as we do a side-by-side of the allegations. Because really, as you go through all of this on the GFI side, all they're really saying is this one thing right here. This is the only thing that they're basing almost their entire case on, is just that WFG's contract is void in California because of this code of the 16600 code. And that's basically everything on its face is supportive of that. It's really the only argument they have. They haven't come out with any factual stuff around ownership not working. They haven't had any testimonies from anybody saying, hey, this is what happened, and I wasn't able to get my ownership, and so that's why I'm leaving, and that's why we're starting this other company. I haven't seen any of that, and I keep waiting for it to happen, and it just isn't happening. So I don't know if it doesn't exist. I don't know if they're waiting to drop this bomb at the end if it goes to court, or what's happening there. I've requested on my videos, if you guys have anything like that, of stories of people who were, not treated correctly by WFG, I would love to hear about them. But basically all I'm getting is really stuff from former GFI agents or former Pinnacle agents talking about the other side. And I've gotten all kinds of trainings. I've gotten all kinds of phone calls with them doing stupid stuff. And I'm kind of having a hard time. I don't want to put all of that out. I'm trying to decide how to give you guys accurate information and not just stuff that seems like it could be bad. I think if you went through anybody's training for a long enough period of time, if you went through enough of my YouTube videos, you would find me saying something that's probably inappropriate or doesn't come off the right way or whatever it is. So I'm trying to keep it, I'm not trying to just put a bunch of fluff out there or hearsay or these kinds of things. I'm trying to keep it as factual and to the point as possible. And so we'll release some of that stuff as we can, or if it counteracts some of the things that GFI or WFG are saying, so that way we can see some of the facts behind it and what actually happened. So, and then you can kind of come down here and see the last points. All of this is very much the same. They're both 23 pages, so not really a whole lot changed. So this one's going to be basically the same, and all they're doing is asking for dismissal. So they don't want it to go to court, they just kind of want it to be dismissed, and so they're filing this in order to be able to hopefully get some kind of dismissal, which is kind of interesting to me, because normally what you see, like if you look at a lot of the political stuff that's happening right now, kind of what they're doing is they're writing it because they know people are going to read it. And so it's written more for the audience than it is for the judge, if that makes any sense to you. So they're putting out their two sides of why they're doing things, and we're not getting any of that from Olson's side. Like in a brief thing, he goes, well, I was kind of upset with the way WFG handled things, and so that's why I'm starting my own company. But then there's nothing to back that up in any of this documentation, which is kind of frustrating on this side, because I keep kind of waiting for that. So let's just get into this particular part. Again, we're going to go through just this one right here. Other defendants leave. So that's on page 5. So let's just scroll down to that, and you guys can see what exactly was added to that. Okay, other defendants. So this is the new part that was added in defense of the GFI being started and the people that are going over. So obviously they added Cofield, Cherwanowski, and Carter were former agents who maintained a close professional relationship with the Olsons and served as a downline agent in Olson's hierarchy. WFG started to believe that Olson had formed a competing business and was using his downline agents to conspire against WFG to recruit agents and join the new business. After terminating Olson, WFG began intimidating and threatening agents with litigation if they left WFG and joined Mr. Olson or another company. WFG ultimately started terminating its contracts with multiple agents who served under Olson's hierarchy, including the defendants Cherwanowski and Carter, which we'll see here in a minute. And Cofield, I guess, resigned. So if that makes any difference to you in the way that they're doing it. Despite being concerned about being sued by WFG, Cofield decided that he was better off leaving WFG on his own terms than being fired. He ultimately resigned from WFG. So that's really the only update in this whole thing. So nothing against why they're doing any of it. It was just basically how it came into play. So that was the only update, kind of a big fat nothing sandwich as far as that goes in additional information for GFI's side. Not really anything going in there. Although I think it's interesting that they keep using this intimidating and threatening. And I think what they mean here is that when you terminate from the company, they send you a letter about your obligations that you still have with the company, right? So it goes back over your non-solicitation. It goes back over some of those different aspects of what you're still required, that if you have paperwork from WFG, you should turn that in, that if you, you're not supposed to take things with you, the way you're supposed to exit the business. And so they're using that as intimidating and threatening. Unless anybody has information on this, if you guys have phone calls of WFG literally calling up these agents and saying, hey, we're going to threaten you with a lawsuit if you go over, Again, I haven't heard of that happening, but the way they're using this language seems like that's what they're implying, when really it's just a, hey, don't forget about your obligations as you leave. You're still required to act in a professional manner. So that's it. As far as those things go, again, still surprised that they haven't come out with new stuff for us to really kind of chew on as far as that goes. So let's hop into, see if there's any good questions. Can you address Steve Siebold's statement? Yeah, so I got asked this a couple times too. Yeah, what's going on with Steve Siebold? He's been very pro Eric since the beginning. We've got a couple questions about Eric going on there. And then also Tyler's asking about it too. This drama he keeps deflecting that he's taking Olson's side, that he is neutral. So yeah, maybe Olson bribed Siebold. I don't know about that. Comments were neutral. They were 100% pro Eric. Yeah, and he definitely struck a. I doubt that. You guys are being silly. I don't know if he actually struck a deal with Siebold. I don't think that's true. But so a little bit of background with Siebold. So I had actual conversations with Siebold, and him and I wouldn't say we were close, but we would talk once in a while. He was on the, I think he got recruited. I don't know if it was direct to the Wealth Wave side, but he was part of that whole How Many Works thing. And so I had some conversations with him kind of about that, and he obviously had done the whole book on WFG, which was prior to him getting into WFG. I think it was something about, I don't have it up here. The truth about the World Financial Group. So he did that whole book. Then he ended up getting recruited into WFG. He was under the Wealth Wave side. And then he had stopped working with WFG. I think he was there for 2 or 3 years. I don't know exactly. And then he kind of put out this promotional video a little bit about Eric Olson. So I took it a little bit differently. So when Steve Siebold, when he was leaving, I had a little bit of a conversation with him about the business. And those of you guys that are in the industry, you can kind of understand what I'm about to say. But because we kind of get a bad rap for it. But the Wealth Wave side is a little bit more sophisticated, if you will. Like if you remember, even back in the day, there were kind of two sides of WFG, the blue and the green team. One side was supposed to be more like the financial planner guys. The other one was supposed to be a little bit more of the insurance guys, like the Swan Win, and then the financial professionals. And they were kind of trying to create these two categories. Well, Wealth Wave is kind of in that more financial professional guys. Those are a lot of CPAs, a lot of high net worth guys, very high client base, that kind of stuff. Doesn't mean they don't do the other stuff, but that was kind of like their side of it. So a lot of what they do is more of the sell first and recruit after, right? They're kind of more of that, I don't want to say a defensive player, if you will, but they're more on that, we're going to give you education, we're going to talk about a lot of this stuff, and then if you're interested, you can kind of become a client, and then if you're interested, maybe we'll recruit you on the back end, which, as you guys know, in this industry is very different from the Pinnacle side or a lot of the other parts of WFG, where they're very much recruit first and then sell on the back end, right? So it's just different mentalities. And so when I was talking to Steve, he said one of his biggest and obviously, take this, everybody's going to have different opinions on how to run their own business. But what Steve was saying was that he wished he would have gone more of the recruit first and sell after. And so what I took in his message from Eric wasn't so much specifically Eric based. It was more based on he wished he would have gone to leadership that would have taught him to recruit first and sell second. So that was how I took it, if that makes any sense to you guys. And it wasn't as much pro Eric, although I think Steve does like Eric. He's interviewed Eric. I think Steve is good with understanding leadership. And that's what he's spent his whole life doing and talking about. And so it doesn't mean that it's pro Eric and what he's doing. I think he's just pro Eric and Eric being a good leader. And it's not saying that there aren't good leaders in WFG, but he's saying don't bet against the guy. Like whether he stays with WFG or not, and obviously he's not, Eric will be successful in what he does in life because that's just Eric, right? He's got this winning mentality. So I don't think it was pro GFI necessarily. I think it was more pro Eric. Like, don't bet against the guy. He's still going to be fine, which I think is absolutely true. If you break it down, you take the emotion out of it, Eric's going to be perfectly fine. I'm not worried about him at all. The people I'm worried about are the ones that get caught up doing weird stuff in the middle when they're straddling the fence, when they're moving agents and clients over. Those are the people who end up getting in trouble, not the people at the top. And we've already seen that because they asked why Eric's not on a lot of the trainings, and they go, well, because he still has to be behind the camera. So he's smart enough to stay away from it. The ones who catch the shrapnel are the younger agents who don't really know what they're doing, and their leadership is saying, oh, bring your clients over, and they take that as, oh, well, let me call them, cancel this policy at the cost of them losing all the money that's in their IUL, and then move this into this new IUL. It's the younger ones, the newer ones that end up getting in trouble from that. So I don't know if that kind of helps any. So what is Wealth Wave? Can you address? Many of us don't understand the structures. Could Olson set up something like that? I don't know what you're asking here. If you can kind of reword that. I get caught up on your industry competitors on my lunch break. Yeah. Thanks, Jamie. Jamie, at some point we need to do some kind of video together. I would love to see more about Experior too, as we're talking about more of these companies. I did one with Khalib. I don't know how you felt about that. You should check that out. Let me know how the rating kind of was. I think he was a little bit more pro Experior and Vantage. So the WSB setup, it's kind of the same thing as most of them. They have their own, I don't know. WFG did this, I felt this weird thing. I think they've been very, like non-proactive. So what it felt like happened was WFG kind of told all the agents you can't really use the WFG brand. Like, you're not supposed to put logos of WFG on anything. But people want to do that kind of with their team, and then so they have these kind of team names that have kind of happened. WSB is one of those. Wealth Wave is one of those. Revolution is one of those. Symmetry is another one. So they just kind of create their own team things. Could Olson have set up a US? I don't know what you mean by that. Could Olson have set up WSB instead of leaving? I don't know what WSB set up. So anyway, but yeah, sorry, Jiang, I don't really know what you're asking on that. Could he have set that up? He kind of already had that with Pinnacle. Pinnacle was his WSB, as far as I understand. That was kind of his version of it. So, all right, so let's hop into a little bit of the timeline, and we can see kind of where some of this stuff is at. So this was helpful for me in really understanding what happened and when. So obviously Olson started in 2003. That's not all that fascinating, but so what happened was Eric apparently was having conversations prior to September, but I don't have exact dates on those. So he tried to transfer his agency to Sandra. Now, what happened in that boardroom meeting, I don't know. I don't know exactly what was said, obviously, if he was saying, hey, I'm going to create a competing company. And so he was trying to move it to Sandra, and they said no because they knew about his anchor-leg strategy, and they didn't want him to do that. Obviously, we don't know what happened in that conversation, but these are the facts of what actually happened. So September, he tries to move it over. WFG says, no, you can't do that. We don't really know what you're trying to do, so we're just not going to allow you to do it. On October 4th, Sandra resigns. WFG confirms that. On the October 13th, GFI was formed in Wyoming. So literally right after she resigned, she starts forming the company. She starts getting it affiliated in other companies, California, Texas, and Florida. And then this is kind of when we saw Cofield's NDA was sometime in the end of October, when he's having people sign NDAs as he's talking about another company. So I'm assuming, and this is just an assumption on my part, that Olson was probably around the same time doing NDAs with WFG agents talking about the new company as it's getting formed, right? This is when we're seeing those kinds of contracts coming out. And then here on the 28th of November is when Maricela Rivera does her meeting with Olson about GFI. So this is where she's talking about signing the NDA, what Olson is telling her about Thawley coming over, what he's saying about who's backing the company, all of that stuff that's happening. You can see Marcella's testimony. I put that as another video. You can go check that out if you want. And then on December 14th, they trademarked the name GFI. On the beginning of January is when they really start rating WFG agents. Now, I don't know if they were recruiting them previous to that. I'm assuming they were. But then on January 2nd, Maricela has another call, and this is the day that she actually joins GFI. So I don't know if it wasn't open previous to that, if they were waiting for the name to be trademarked or whatever, but this is kind of the first evidence we have of a recruit over there. She signs the firewall, she joins GFI, and if you remember, the firewall is the CYA. Like, we didn't approach you, we weren't talking to you about trying to recruit you over, you came to us, anything that we had talked about is private, you're not supposed to share it, kind of a CYA. We didn't tell you to bring any of your agents over, we didn't tell you to bring any of your clients over, you're coming over kind of in your own free will, which was never really true, but it's supposed to help kind of protect GFI from any of the lawsuits in the future. January 3rd is when Nick Bosley meets with Olson, and you guys saw that testimony when he talked about what happened there. And sometime in this time frame, Olson was offered $20 million per year for his contract to stay on with WFG. So all of this is kind of happening simultaneously. And then we have the testimony from Yanira, and Yanira is the one that was told to download the client information and bring that over. This is where we have the question about churning. And so there's a video on that as well. You can see the testimony for that one too. Next is on January 10th, Eric prospects Rob Day. So they have a phone call. He has a phone call with Rob Day, says kind of the same exact things that he said to Yanira and to Bosley and to the other lady, and was basically saying, WFG is kind of falling apart, everybody's leaving, Thawley's coming over, we've got all this backing with the lawsuit, so you don't have to worry about any of that stuff, so come on over, and they're working on recruiting. So on January 10th, Wealth runs a GFI presentation with over 250. We're assuming it's WFG agents, but it could have been other people on there as well. And then Tavares Dove and Mimi Dove were apparently there as well. And so I got some additional information about this. I don't know if anybody knows why Matthew Welsh was terminated. Please let me know. But apparently he was terminated previously. I don't know if that was in preparation of GFI or what happened there. But apparently Tavares, and this is just a rumor that I've heard, I don't know how accurate this is. Correct me if I'm wrong, please. But apparently he was terminated from WFG for cause. Something about a lady didn't have a beneficiary, and so allegedly he said or either put himself as the beneficiary, so I believe that's why he got terminated from WFG. Again, that's kind of just hearsay. I don't have an actual paperwork that says any of that. So then Mimi basically took over Tavares's business from there. But they were both apparently on that call, and both of them had been formally terminated from WFG. And I think this is important because this is kind of what happened. We saw a lot of this happening with PHP or other companies. Somebody gets terminated from WFG, and then they go somewhere else and get started. And I'm not saying Patrick was terminated. I don't know what happened with that. But a lot of times we see agents get terminated from WFG and then go over to another company, and they're still able to use their stuff. So then on the 14th, Showrack meets with Cheranowski, and so we have that testimony. It's not a full video, but that's kind of in the testimony there as well. So WFG then sees all of this stuff is happening. Thawley and McGinnis and I think Rob Day run some kind of meeting on January 17th that's supposed to go against some of the things that GFI has been saying. So they hop on this meeting, they basically say, look, Thawley's not leaving, the stuff that they're saying is not true. And so Maricela, Bosley, Showrack, Day, they were all on that call. So now they're starting to get this understanding of, okay, here's what GFI is saying. WFG says one of the first things that they say, and that these things are not true. So now these people are starting to find out that what GFI and Eric are saying is not true. So then on the 17th, Olson texts McGinnis saying, guess you made up your mind, right? Because he was on that call with Thawley. And then on the 17th, GFI Leaders Bulletin, so people were looking on social media, GFI posts this bulletin of former WFG agents, from Welsh to Bayona, Hart, Hidalgo, and Carter. All of the spouses are on the leaders bulletin at GFI, while their other spouse is still with GFI. So these guys were still with WFG, and then they're posting them being on the leaders bulletin at GFI simultaneously. So this is kind of where we're seeing the anchor leg strategy happening. One spouse is with WFG, the other spouse is with GFI. Okay, on the 18th, GFI and Olson and Cofield start doing damage control on social media. So they start saying, hey, go to these different platforms on Facebook and say some positive things about GFI. And, Cofield puts out some stuff like, oh, if you believe these old retired guys, then you deserve to make half as much money, and that kind of stuff. We saw some of those texts about that. Then on the 20th, Eric threatens McGinnis on a text message, and not like a literal threat, but basically like, hey, if you tell anybody about what I've told to you, you'll be hearing from my lawyers. So he texts that over to McGinnis after apparently, because McGinnis wasn't responding back to these. So on the 17th, he says, guess you made up your mind after that meeting with Thawley. And then, if you speak out against me, you'll hear from my lawyers, was a text message that we got to McGinnis. On the 22nd, Eric was terminated for cause. We read that together. There's another video on that if you want to see that. After he declined the $20 million. So I don't know exactly when he declined it, but apparently when he said no was when WFG terminated him. So I guess that's when they realized that was kind of the last-ditch effort, that Eric was going to be doing his own thing. So on the 23rd, Cofield hosts a WFG only recruiting video. So if you remember, we went through his text messages or on whatever it was, whatever app it was, and so he had WFG agents hop on there, and basically he's recruiting them all over to GFI. Then on the 24th is when Carter and Churanowski get terminated and Cofield resigns, and something about Rochelle. So I think that they had the two of them. So Churanowski was on one side and Rochelle was on the other. Something like that happened there as well. On the 25th was when Eric sues, WFG sues Eric, then GFI sued WFG, and then Eric sues WFG on the 26th. On the 26th, Cofield then starts that Signal group chat, right? So everybody who's recruiting over to GFI, he's moving them over to Signal because that's not traceable. At the end of January, I don't have an exact date on this, Maricela resigns from GFI and goes back to WFG. So apparently they're letting people come back because part of what happened with Maricela was she was on that call with Thawley, and so she realized that that was not true. And there were other things where they said that her team was going to be going over to GFI, because if you remember, GFI, if the leader wouldn't go, GFI was coming under them, recruiting their team over, and then going back to the leader and saying, hey, if you don't come over, your whole team's coming, so you're going to basically lose your income. So Marcella got caught up in that, and they said that her team was coming over. She went over, the team didn't come over, so then she went back. So she was kind of finding out that some of those things were not accurate. The beginning of February, they started advertising that Break the Silence, that flyer that was circulating around. And I don't know if you know any of these guys, but more former agents, Matos, Bieza, Dorche, King, Rios, and others were posting that video. So apparently they're taking that as a sign that they were probably with GFI. And then on February 4th was where all this kind of started for me, and that I was hoping to share this and see what exactly was going on. And he ended up canceling that. I don't think it was from the lawsuit because he didn't have the temporary restraining order, but the lawyers probably said don't hop on and do that. So February 18th, this is when Cofield posted up that Instagram photo where he was, or video where he was saying, well, I didn't know that I didn't own my book of business, and I did this for X number of years, and so what is your actual contract? That's when that video came out. And then February 24th was Cabo San Lucas, and Olson somewhere in that video was saying something about, I've never had ownership before, so I had to go and create it. So that kind of gets us caught up to date. And the reason why these are important is because it leads to WFG's thought process of these guys are defaming WFG even after their contract has ended. So they're still saying stuff that they never had ownership before. And right, this is a lot of what, if you remember, this is a lot of what I was hearing. You were probably hearing the same thing. You don't own your book of business. You never had ownership before. And then that's kind of when some of the lies came out around Joanna about her not having ownership of her book of business, which we did a video on that, which was inaccurate as well. So that's kind of where we are up to date in the timeline of everything. Hope that's a little bit helpful in understanding what exactly is going on and how all of that breaks down. And there's videos for almost all of these if you want to go check any of those out and get a better idea of the chronological order. Okay, so then let's look at one more thing, and then we'll kind of go through some of the chat a little bit, and then we'll go into that last video about ownership. So this is kind of where it stands right now. So on WFG side, they break it down into a bunch of different categories. It's kind of like a catch-all. They're doing the same thing with some of the political stuff right now. They kind of just throw everything against the wall and then kind of see what fits, because you got to remember they're bringing the suit before they have a lot of information. So they're talking about breach of contract, tortious interference, civil conspiracy, which means multiple people are conspiring to do things, unjust enrichment, and then conversion, and then also this Code of California Conduct 17200. So in that, what we're looking for in the lawsuit, right, if we're trying to determine right and wrong, okay, on WFG side, they're saying, well, we have a non-solicitation clause, and in that, you're not supposed to go back and you're not supposed to talk to agents, and you're not supposed to talk to clients. And so some things that add weight to their side of it is, well, why are people signing NDAs? If they're not soliciting these agents, why do we have NDAs that people are having to sign? Why are there firewalls that when we recruit WFG agents over, that we have to have them sign it, that they don't speak out against us for the things that we're doing, which all is kind of weird, right? Like you wouldn't do that normally if you were doing things the right way. So are these things happening? Question mark, up to your decision as far as that goes. Are they targeting WFG agents, and are they targeting WFG clients? And you can watch the videos and kind of make that decision up to yourself. Non-disparagement. So are you telling lies or falsehoods or things against WFG that are inaccurate? So there were questions about ownership. If you remember that video again with Joanna, they talked about, you don't own anything in WFG, which we found that to be inaccurate. They said lies about Thali going to GFI, which we found out that was inaccurate on January 17th. Lies about GFI ownership. A lot of these guys were promised, if you come over, we'll give you 1% of the company. They're now at like 7,000 agents. How do you give 7,000 agents 1%? You can't really do that. So who gets the 1%? Does Olson keep 51% and then give away 49%? I don't know. We haven't seen any of that in the paperwork. We've looked through both the GFI contract and their EMD contract. It says nothing about percentages of ownership. It doesn't mean he couldn't be doing that behind the scenes. Maybe Welsh got some of that for helping to start the company. I don't know. And then also about corporate backing, they were talking about SGI and them being the backers as far as being able to do some securities products or whatever it might be. That obviously was inaccurate. They said that they don't have the proper licenses to be that person, but it doesn't mean they couldn't do it in the future. So let's see, maybe some of these things will come out. Maybe in 3 months, Thali will say, haha, I was just kidding. I did go to GFI. I don't know. So let's see if these things end up being true or not. And then also supposed lies about product providers coming over. Is Nationwide and Prudential and all these other guys, are they going to be coming over to GFI? We haven't seen that yet. And then there's talk about confidential information. As far as WFG structure, I think that's really weak. Everybody knows WFG structure, even if you're not in WFG. It's been copied so many times now that it just is what it is. But was there confidential information around client information, around agent information? Basically, they were taking leaders' bulletins, and when you're part of the danger of straddling the fence in the anchor leg strategy is that you have all of the information of those former agents to then go prospect them and recruit them over to GFI. It also has the leaders bulletin, so you can tell which ones to go target, which ones are better at recruiting, which ones have more production, and who to go talk to. And if they don't work with you, who's underneath them that I can go recruit that person, so you have to come over with them. So is that considered confidential information, and are you allowed to do that? And then client information, because that's confidential as well. And so we saw the video, I think it was Yanira who was talking about that, and them asking, I think it was her, where they were asking her to download all the client information. They were going to pay her to do that, then go to other WFG agents before they move over, download all of that client information so they can bring that over. So technically, that would be considered confidential information because you only have that because you're in WFG's system. So I don't know kind of what happens with that. And then fraud is one of the ones that was not up here, but this basically is reserved kind of for the anchor leg strategy, in that you're defrauding the company by sitting on the fence like that. And so if you remember, they have one spouse here, another spouse or family member here. They're kind of using both platforms at the same time and allowing them to move things over and have access to things that they shouldn't have, because you're not really supposed to be with two competing companies at the same time. It's okay if you want to go do something else, that's fine, but you're not really supposed to straddle the fence or sit on the fence and have a leg on both sides where you're moving information over. So that's all the things that WFG has alleged, all the things that they have information coming out against. That's basically their stance on the entire lawsuit. And then GFI's response, if you take away the the feeling side of it, it all boils down to one thing. They don't dispute doing any of this stuff. All they say is that there's a code in California 16600 that says that you're not supposed to have any type of contract that inhibits a person from engaging in a lawful profession, trade, or business of any kind to that extent would make it void. So their whole argument is not that we're not doing any of this stuff, not that we're not having people sign NDAs, not that we're not lying, not that what we said was inaccurate, not that we made things up, not that we're not taking clients, not that we're not taking agents. We're doing all of that stuff, but we should be allowed to do it because according to this code, you're not allowed to have any kind of requirements that restrict us from doing the business that we want to do. So I don't know how you guys feel about that, if that's a strong enough reason for you, but there's no questions here about WFG did me wrong. There's no evidence really of any of that stuff, other than if you kind of want to take into consideration that they didn't allow Olson to do the transfer when he wanted to do it. But again, we don't know that conversation. He might have said something like, I'm starting another company, I just want to move this over to Sandra. I don't know. So I don't know if you guys feel that that's a strong enough argument, but that's all that they've brought to the table. There's nothing else really to digest as far as why they're doing what they're doing. That's really all we got. So I don't know. I don't know if that's enough for you guys, if that makes much of a difference on your side. Yeah, I don't know. So let's go through. Do you know if Eric or anyone showed up in Hawaii? Oh, I don't know. Does anybody have an answer to this? I don't think so. I haven't heard anything about it. Does anybody know if anybody from Eric's team or GFI went out to Hawaii and started recruiting people? I don't know. The lawyer probably said not to do that. It was probably not a good idea. Tricia, cool. Talking about Experior. Eric was actually offered $50 million a year to be coded under Ed's agent code if he stayed. How do you explain that? Why try to keep someone so bad? I don't know anything about that. That's the first time I've heard it. The number I heard from WFG was $20 million. Yeah, Victoria, this is a question I have for WFG as well, is that if they know about all of these things, there were so many good people that I think have started other companies and done other stuff because of Pinnacle. And I've gotten so many stories. Like, I don't know what to do with all of them. I wish I could just air all of them out, but they're kind of hearsay and I don't want to do that. But so many stories of stuff that Pinnacle has done, and You look at people like Fredo Barber. I liked her. I thought she was a good person, great family person. And, basically mostly all of her team got taken over to Pinnacle, and WFG didn't do anything about it. So you're right. I don't know why I don't know. I don't know how to answer that question. I'm not WFG, unfortunately. I don't know how to answer that for you. So, doesn't Thali own part of SGI? Yeah, I don't know this either. If anybody has an answer to that, Sandra, does Thali own part of SGI? I don't know. I thought his son worked over there or something. I don't know. I'm not. I don't know. It's outside of mine. But if anybody knows and you can answer that question for Sandra, that would be helpful. I appreciate you. So. That kind of wraps up what we're talking about as far as those different aspects of where the lawsuit is. So one more thing that I wanted to go over, because people keep asking me about this with some of the ownership stuff, and I think it's a question that's kind of out there about how WFG handles these things. Is there an existence of, Pinnacle keeps putting out there, well, you don't own your book of business, it doesn't transfer to your spouse, you don't have any ownership, and then obviously the Experior guys always hop on there because they're good at that. They will prospect anybody anywhere, anytime. So they're good at that part of it. But I haven't really gotten a good answer. So I wanted to play a little bit of this video because there were two parts of it that I think were kind of important in answering those questions. So I can't answer that question because I don't know what goes on behind the scenes, but I can tell you what I've seen and what I've kind of experienced. And so we'll bring that up in talking a little bit about some ownership questions, and you guys can kind of make your determination. So this particular video is from convention. I think it just adds some kind of background to the question about ownership and what actually happens there. And so we'll play this too. It's actually kind of in two parts, but I'll stop it in the middle because there's two different points that I want to make on this particular video. But this is about Jay Gauthier, and so if you guys kind of know a little bit about his story, I think there's some great examples about ownership and what happens in the business when those particular things happen. So let's get into this, and then we'll talk a little bit more about it.
He used to be a firefighter. He's been here for 11 years, and last night he was recognized as having 500 recruits in the base shop and 2 million points. He was recently promoted CEO, and my favorite part about his story is actually, because the thing is, as you see many stories today, you hear a lot about income, a lot about titles, but it's about changing your family's future. So for example, the person that recruited him was his dad. And his dad only had one recruit, which is him. But guess what, ladies and gentlemen? Because of that, today, our speaker makes $750,000, but his dad is able to make $250,000 income and has been able to retire because of a family business together. So ladies and gentlemen, please help me welcome.
So I think that part is important. So I think what a lot of people miss there is that you can't hit SMD with one recruit. So obviously, and I think this is a testament to Charlier because, and I think they're both named Jay. So I thought that was kind of cool. I think that's kind of a testament to ownership. And the reason why that's important is because, again, if you understand the structure, Charlier is basically cutting his income in half. Not his income, but his income from Jay in half to allow his dad to come up, right? So, because he's going to override that even less. The dad isn't really producing much, if anything. So I think that's super cool to be able to take your father and have him override your business, right? We talk about ownership, right? So obviously there was a conversation with Jay and Charlier to have his dad come in above to override his business. His dad's now able to retire because of that. Whereas what should have happened is he should have almost gotten no override, because you can't hit SMD with just one recruit, right? So he would have gotten no override from his son, and then Charlier would have gotten twice the amount of income. So just kind of a testament, if that speaks to you at all, but I think that's kind of something important to talk about, that to allow them to kind of have that aspect, and that you don't have to allow that stuff to happen. Now, is there a written rule on the books? No, because people would probably take advantage of that, right? Because that's an extra $250,000 that's coming into his pocket, that's coming out of the leadership's pocket simply by putting his dad in there. But however they worked that out, maybe the dad's still involved in some of that stuff. I don't know what they did in that situation, but I think that's kind of important to understand and to be able to know that that's something that they do. And then let's look at this last part, and it's about 4 minutes, but I think it's important for context on kind of what happened.
From Southern California, Jay Gauthier Jr. This is something that for a long time, I was doing the business just trying to make money. That was really it, because I didn't have any. So when you didn't have any, that's the only thing you think about. And I just wanted to make money. And I'll tell you, I've come to discover through the years that this is something you should be really proud to be a part of, no matter what your broke cousin says or what your dumb neighbor says. This is something you should be proud of. And I'll tell you why. In the last 3 weeks, we've lost 3 agents of ours who've died. One of them, she's in the ICU right now fighting for her life. They told me yesterday she may have 5 to 7 days. Arguably, my team would agree too. The best direct recruit I've had in my entire career. And one of our best friends. And these 3 young ladies, they crossed the border to have a plastic surgery procedure together. And they got fungal meningitis. And they've been in the ICU for about 6 months. And 3 of them have died already, and we've got one who's fighting for her life right now. Let me tell you why I tell you this story. The stuff we do really makes the difference. It really does. I know we say that all the time. I want you to know something. One of them had no life insurance because when she got here, she believed she needed to make more money and pay off her car before she could get a policy. No matter what we tried to do, she wouldn't do it. She finally did it. She died while her policy was in underwriting. In fact, the day she died, her husband's policy got approved. The next one, they're all in their 30s, by the way, like 30 years old. The next one, she had a 5-year-old daughter who turned 5 the day before she died. She has a $700,000 policy. That kid will never have to worry about anything ever again. The last one, she's got $2 million in coverage. And just one of the purest souls that I've ever met. And her husband, and she's got a 9-month-old daughter who was 3 months old when she went in the ICU. She hasn't seen in 6 months. A 2-year-old son and another son. And she's got $2 million in coverage. And you can't replace the loss of a person. Through business now, people who've died with no life insurance. I've seen people who died with a little bit, and I've seen people who've died with a lot. And one thing I can tell you, you'll get a lot of recognition, and you'll win a lot of awards, and you're going to make a lot of money if you do this and you do it right. But Emmanuel Tita said something earlier. He said, why are you thinking about money? And when you stop thinking about money, you'll start making money. What we get paid may seem like a lot, but it's nothing compared to what it will pay our client someday. What we make is pennies compared to what it'll pay our client someday. We may make 3, 4, 5, 7, 8, 9, 10 grand, and we've written checks and delivered checks for over $3 million in the last 3 weeks. And it's nothing compared to the day I walked in an appointment trying to get my promotion. And so the one thing I want you to remember coming out of here is this is something you should be proud to be a part of.
And so we'll kind of stop it there, but to kind of do an update on that. So somebody mentioned in here too, I heard after you pass away, your spouse can take over the business, but must be licensed. So yeah, absolutely. And somebody said for your kids to inherit the business must be EMD in order to do that. Otherwise, the entire business gets passed over to your upline, your kid. Yeah, see, that's inaccurate. And that's the information that keeps spreading around. So what happened with sons or daughters, relatives, parents have been WSB, blue side, hierarchies. Yeah, hierarchies are all the same. So Jay, kind of what you're talking about, and this is the rumors that keeps getting passed around. So what happened after that, Crystal did end up passing away. I think it took a little bit longer than 5 days. And I remember watching Jay's Instagram feed because we're friends on Instagram. And I remember him in the hospital, and he was the one kind of doing almost everything behind the scenes. His business almost kind of stopped. Like, he was in the hospital every day with her. So she ended up passing. The husband was not licensed. And this is kind of where the debate keeps coming up. And what they ended up doing is, yes, the husband does need to get licensed. That's absolutely accurate. In California, you need all of it as 60%. So I think if you can write your name on it and guess 50%, you basically pass in California. So you did have to get that. And so the business did transfer over to him. So another story of the business transferring over, and I think it happened fairly quickly. I mean, he did have to go get his license, but for that business to be able to transfer over, he was not licensed originally, didn't really have a lot of aspect of what he did in the business. And so for WFG to then go in and allow him to transfer that over, I think that kind of goes against the message that GFI has been telling us about, that you don't have any ownership in any of these things. And so unfortunately, this inaccurate information keeps getting spread. And so we're seeing time and time again. And if you have information about this where it didn't happen that way and WFG didn't do the right thing, send it to me. I would love to know that as well. I'll put it out just like I put out stuff that's positive about WFG. I'll put out positive stuff or negative stuff against WFG too if you have it. I know just nobody sent it to me. And I think at the end of the day, really what I want to end this on is, I think at the end of the day, GFI, Olson, a lot of these guys forgot what their mission was and what the purpose of what we really do in the industry. And this is one of the reasons why I got into the industry. It's why I love the industry. Outside of who or what company you work with, is I think it's the only industry that you do more for the client than ever happens for you. And that what you actually put in place, like if you think about if somebody buys a car or a home, it doesn't change their life the way that it does if getting their financial life in order, or getting a term policy and it paying out $500,000 when they pass away and you make $600 on it, right? Like, I think what we do for the client is so important in the aspect of life. And I think that people forgot about that. And I think that in this moving to GFI, one of the comments on one Jaime's page, somebody was like, oh, well, I heard after I left, everything got crazy with WFG. No, that, and he's like, no, that's not true at all. Like, WFG isn't crying about a lot of this stuff, surprisingly. Most of them seem happy that Eric is going and doing his own thing. What they're not happy about is the way that they're doing it. And I think there's a big difference in that. And that most of them that I talk to even wish Eric well. They say, these things didn't happen right when I was in Pinnacle. I didn't like the way they do these things. But obviously he can lead. And so if he wants to go do something else, then go do it. Just don't take the people and churn the clients that it hurts everybody else in the process of you going and doing something else. And I think that's really what we're trying to figure out in these videos. And hopefully this has been helpful for you, and you've gotten a kind of an update of where things are at, and it gives you a better perspective of what's actually going on, because there's been so much noise out there and so much propaganda that the more I dug into it, much like most of these people who were approached by GFI, the more I find out that it's inaccurate. And hopefully this is helpful for you, and we'll kind of have updates as we go. I don't know when the next updates are going to go. According to that last paper, it says that the next update as far as the court dates isn't supposed to be until something like, I don't know, what is that? If we come back up to the top, May 9th or something? May 2nd. So we might not have any updates until closer to May. I don't know. I mean, as soon as I see updates in there, I will go in there and do my best to update you guys. But we're kind of just in that period where WFG is figuring things out. They're still, they've got subpoenas that they're going through. They've submitted requests to talk to people to get more information, phone requests, text messages, all of that kind of stuff they're going through right now. So as that comes in, I'll kind of update you guys, but I think it's going to be a little bit of a lull from here through them actually going to court. And then this is just for the dismissal, assuming that the judge actually wants to hear about a dismissal. If not, it'll actually go into court. And that's really where we'll start getting a lot more information of this coming through. Is going to be either at this dismissal or that actual court date. So anyway, hope that was helpful for you guys. I appreciate you. Oh, one more question. You're welcome for doing these videos, Jay. You're welcome. Hope that was helpful. And if anybody wants the documents, I apologize. I hate to have to do this, but I did have to put it behind a firewall. So you do have to join on YouTube if those are something you want, and then I'll give you access to those documents. And one last question, then we'll hop off. Did Eric Olson get Cap to transfer to GFI as well? Yes. So apparently Eric paid Cap to come over, and then some of the questions around that are Cap overrides Pinnacle. So Cap, Levitan, and then from what I understand, it's Olson. So Olson moving over affects Levitan and Cap. So I don't know how much of it was because of that, if he felt obligated to Cap. I think, if you guys know Cap, and I personally, I like Cap. I haven't had any problems with him. I like the way he speaks. I think he's a very godly man. I think what Eric needed in that situation was somebody to bring in the God aspect and the religious aspect of what them doing. If you saw a lot of their posts early on, it was like, we're ordained and this is happening, and they were using all these Bible quotes and all that stuff. And so that's why I was kind of so confused, is like, I thought they were on the side of like, we're doing the right thing and WFG hasn't been doing the right thing, and look what they did to Cap with the base shop of excellence, whatever that's called. So yeah, Greg actually did end up going over. We played his video on here as well. I have not, and Thali came out saying he was not actually going. So anyway, appreciate you guys, and I will catch you guys later. I'll update you as I get more stuff. Talk to you later. Bye.